Welcome. Buenas tardes. Thank you so much for all of the mommies joining us here today. Thank you especially for the First Lady of the United States, Michelle Obama. Thank you for being here. And thank you so much and welcome to the viewers who are joining us on the Mamiverse.com website live stream. My name is Maria Cardona, and I'm going to be your moderator today. I am also a contributor to the Mamiverse.com website, as well as a political contributor to CNN and CNN Español. We're so thrilled that you could join us for this historic conversation with the First Lady and some fabulous, dynamic Latina mothers who are also contributing editors to the Mamiverse.com website, as well as part of the ever-growing Mamiverse.com family. We wanted to say thank you to the First Lady because we know you're so busy and you took some time out of your busy schedule to be here with us today. But we also know that it's a huge priority for you and for this president to really listen to what Americans are going through in all communities and in all walks of life. So we want to say thank you for being here. We want to also say if you want to join us on the conversation on Twitter, it's at Latinos for Obama, at Mamiverse, hashtag Latinos 2012. We want to have a conversation today about the historic nature of this election and really what's at stake for Latina mothers and their families. We know that this is something that you are always really privy to in terms of really hearing directly from us what we're concerned about, what keeps us up at night as Latina mothers, as caregivers, as the architects of our children's future in this great country.
Absolutely.
So we've all heard that Latinos are going to play an outsized role in this election. So I say, and so it goes, as the deciders in the Latino households, it's going to be us Latina mothers who are going to have a very big say in who the next president of the United States is going to be. So before I kick it off for the conversation, I do want to go around and quickly introduce our dynamic Latina mothers who are here today in speaking with the First Lady. First, I want to start with Catherine Archuleta. Thank you, Catherine, for being here.
My
Catherine
pleasure.
is the national political director for the Obama for America campaign and the highest ranking Latina, and also a mother.
Yes.
We have Melanie Edwards from Orlando. Melanie is the founder and editor of modernmommy.com, a blog for working mothers. We have Yvette from Colorado. She's a mother of two, and she's the author of the Muy Bueno cookbook, which actually blossomed from a blog. So congratulations on your book.
Thank you.
And then we have Monica Oliveras from North Carolina. She's a homeschooling mother of two, and she's the writer and publisher of MamiMaestra.com, which is a site for Latino families. And then we have Shirley from New York. Shirley is a single mom whose 8-year-old son was diagnosed on the autism spectrum. She's also a commercial and editorial photographer and producer. So thank you so much. So, Mrs. Obama, I'd like to now give you a chance to sort of share some opening remarks with us as we continue the conversation.
Thank you so much. I mean, I'm going to be brief because we don't have a lot of time, and I really want to listen. I want to hear. I have to say that these kind of conversations that I get to have with women around this country are not just for the viewers and for the participants, but they are completely therapeutic for me as a mother, as a working mother, being able to hear about the challenges, to be able to share our ups and downs in life. These kind of conversations become one of the favorite things that I get to do as First Lady. So this is truly an honor and a privilege that you all have taken time out of your busy lives to come and be with me. There is a lot at stake in this election, and my passion for getting this president reelected has a little bit to do with me being the First Lady and being wife of the president, but it has 99% to do with my girls and the future that I want for them and the world that I want to leave behind for them. Absolutely. And I know that that's why you all are here. I mean, that's why we live and breathe. In the end, we're doing this for our children and our grandchildren. So we understand what this is all about. It's not about us, it's about them. So I think these conversations are useful to remind us, what we're in this for, and how much work it takes to give our kids the future they deserve, and I mean all of our kids. So again, I want to thank you all, and I want to stop and listen. This is an informal conversation, even though we look like lovely ladies, but it's always more fun if we shake it off and laugh and understand that we're here to share stories so that people understand out there that they're not alone. So with that, I will
Thank you,
turn it back
Mrs.
over.
Obama. I want to open it up with Monica because we had a fantastic conversation this morning as we were preparing for this, and she has a very compelling story. She's homeschooling her children. So I wanted just to give you a chance, Monica, to share why you're doing that and why the education piece is so important for you.
Right. So thank you for introducing me. What I wanted to talk about a little bit was the reason I'm homeschooling is just because I kind of live in a failed school district, and I'm fortunate that I have the opportunity to be able to stay home to do that. But I also write about education. That kind of spurred me into doing education. And one of the questions I get a lot from other Latina moms has to do with early education and specifically preschool. You know, I get a lot of questions about why is that important? Do my kids need to go? Why can't I do it at home? And if I can, how can I do it? So one of the biggest issues for us, I think, is education, and a lot of our kids are starting off school already behind. So there's things we need to. I know parents are more concerned about how they can help their children, and we're looking for ways to get the word out that preschool's important, and if they can't, maybe they don't have access or they can't financially afford one, then how can they work with them at home? Because that's a very easy, there's lots of easy things that parents can do to prepare their kids for kindergarten. So.
And I know that this has been a huge priority for you and for this president, as the administration has really focused historic investments, almost $5 billion in the Head Start program.
Absolutely.
And as we know, over a third of Latino children are involved in the Head Start program. So in terms of getting the word out, you're absolutely right, and early education is key. And with this, I want to segue to Shirley, who's the single mom in the group and whose son was diagnosed in the autism spectrum, has talked about how important this early education and early intervention is. So we'd love to hear from you.
Right. I mean, right now, the statistics are insane. It's 1 in 88 kids are being diagnosed on the spectrum, 1 in 54 boys, and not only with autism, but with developmental disorders in general, it's 1 in 6 American kids at this point. So education is really important really early on and in early intervention as well. And it ties in also with affordable health care.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because a lot of these all of our children need affordable health care. But for these children who have specific special needs, it's really important that their parents can afford health care.
Right.
So for me, that's one of the most important issues. I'm a freelancer. I do photography. And I'm about to lose my health insurance right now. So for me, the passing of this act is a huge deal because I need to be able to take care of my son and do it in a healthy way.
Absolutely, and we have heard about all of the benefits, which we need to continue to talk about in terms of the healthcare law, and especially for Latino families.
Because there's so many stories like Shirley's, people who were on the cusp, or I've talked to many young people who are worried about even who were before the passage of health reform, who were worried about changing jobs because you leave a job, you're not sure if you have a pre-existing condition, whether you're going to get covered. And I think it's important for Latinas, for women, for us to make sure our communities understand how important this healthcare reform, what it means for so many of our families, even for those people who have insurance and are secure. The fact that you can't be denied coverage because of pre-existing conditions. You can't be knocked off of your insurance any longer because your child has asthma or you've reached your lifetime cap. All of these important provisions are so critical for us to make sure that people understand, to know how this president has been working to protect our families and protect the health of our kids, most importantly.
And specifically for Latino families, this healthcare law gives 9 million Latinos the opportunity to be covered who didn't have it before. And millions of Latino kids who can now, as you said, not be denied health insurance because of pre-existing conditions. And then being able to stay on their parents' coverage until the age of 26. And I know, Catherine, you have a good story to share on that.
Well, I have a happy story.
A happy story.
Our daughter Graciela was diagnosed with ovarian cancer at 19. And, after you go through all of the things that happen as a family when you go through the treatment, at one point you realize that she, at that point in 2008, could have been knocked off of our insurance because of a pre-existing condition. And also the lifetime limits, which is also very important. So when I think about the Affordable Care Act and all that it gives to Latino families, it gives us a point of hope for our families. And as we were talking earlier, what we care about most, no matter what we do in our professional lives, it's all about our families, our girls, our sons. That's the most important thing.
And that keeps us up at night. I mean, if we
Right.
think about all the things that we worry about, you know, our own personal being is the last thing on our list. What keeps us up at night is caring for our kids and making sure that they have everything possible. I mean, how many families do you know who have been relying up until this point on getting preventative care through the emergency room?
Right.
I mean, how many of us have people in our lives who have, you know, who aren't getting the daily care, who aren't getting early well child visits, their kids aren't getting the immunizations, they're not even getting the regular checkups to check in on weight and nutrition because families don't have access to insurance. Well, now because of reform, that's one less thing that we have to worry about as mothers, and that was a fight worth having, without a doubt.
Absolutely, and something we need to continue to talk about.
Absolutely.
That's a great segue to Yvette in terms of the focus on nutrition, and frankly, how that having good nutrition early on can help prevent a lot of these diseases that we're talking about.
Yeah, as a mother and a cookbook author, it's my passion to have traditions and family and eating together as a family at the dinner table and taking an active role in what your children are eating, which I love the Let's Move campaign. I'm a big fan.
Thank you.
But, and it just frightens me when I hear about the childhood obesity rates and children with diabetes. And and my goal or my question to you was I'd really like to help out in my community as a Latina, as a mother, as a Coloradoan. How can I start promoting you know, working with people in my community about the Let's Move campaign or just early prevention or, you know, getting it taken care of before it's too late?
You know, I think the web, you know, technology is one of the most efficient ways to start having these conversations. That's why this conversation is really important, because we've got a lot of people paying attention.
Absolutely.
And really reminding people that it's the small things. I mean, you don't have to go in and try to take out make big whole-scale changes in your life. I mean, things that we do at home. We try to eat dinner together as a family. And for many people, especially single parents, that's a difficult thing to do. But if you set a goal of trying once or twice a week to sit down at a given time, you know, because what we find, and we do this at our house, even though the president is the president and he's busy, 6:30, whenever he's not traveling and we're all together, we have family dinner. And that's, you know, you do much more than just eat together, but you get to see how your kids' table manners are shaping up. You know, how fast are they eating? Are they finishing your vegetables? Why are vegetables important? It's easier to have these conversations in a family setting where there's, you know, you're not nagging them. It's just relaxed, you know. They're not on the defensive. A lot of times subjects will come up that won't normally come up. So, you know, talking to families about starting there, trying to cook 1 or 2 meals a week more rather than going out. And also finding that saves in terms of budget as well. It's always less expensive to cook at home than eating out. I mean, so I try to caution people that it's the small changes that make the difference. Adding more water into the meals, putting another vegetable on the plate. You know, these are things that we can all do regardless of where we live, what our religious beliefs are, what our socioeconomic status is. So, you know, trying to set the bar at a reasonable level so that people feel like they can reach it, and then when they do, push the bar a little bit higher.
I remember, no, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, Yvette, I think something that you mentioned to us personally was about how you share stories around the dinner table. And I think it's great that you've also mentioned you wanted to put these recipes down on paper for your daughter so that they could live on. And that's the idea of why the book came about. So I think that's a great start already, that you're already creating there.
Yeah, I was just saying it's just so important to keep the traditions alive, because when we were kids, you know, those were the memories that we have, being with our family, eating together.
Exactly. That's what we were talking about today.
Yeah, and so I hate to see when kids are eating in the back seat of a car, you know, and it's like you're robbing them of these great memories that they have with their families.
And our family, that was how we gathered. We gathered around, and it wasn't just holidays, but in my family, we celebrated every uncle and aunt's birthday. Right?
I think we know about that too.
So it seemed like every weekend we were at my grandfather's house because somebody was born again. Right? but there was always a meal, and there was always conversation, and everything was cooked, and nothing was processed. And those are the things that get lost very quickly over generations. And there are things that we can capture that's not just good for our kids' health, but it's good for, as you say, values, traditions, our kids understanding their place in the world, their place in their families. That's, again, what we're working towards. And these policy issues, obesity isn't just about our children's health, physical health, it's about their emotional and mental health as well. Having a family around the table in a way that they know that there are people around them who care, who are watching, who are paying attention.
You talked about the small changes, and that just really brought to me a memory that I have when I was little, and my family first came over from Colombia. We didn't have any money, and so my mother would cook us this fabulous Colombian meal, and then all my friends would be going to the movies and or whatever else. My father said, "Let's go for a walk as a family." And we went for a walk, and we talked about what we did that day. We talked about what happened at school. We talked about what our worries were. And that, to me, is such cherished time. And, my dad then started talking about the importance of education. And this, brings me to you, Melanie, because I know that this is a big issue for you. And my dad's an engineer, so he really sort of focused on us, you should really focus on math. You should really focus on science. And that's an important piece.
It's very tough as busy families, and as as a busy woman with 2 daughters, how do we manage all of this stuff that we have on our plates? How do we make sure our kids eat healthy? How do we do everything? And education, especially, if we're so busy and going, but how do we continue? And having these conversations sometimes is the best way that they learn as well. And I'm sure, Monica, you can attest to that just talking to them, that's how they learn. But specifically, my daughter is 6, and she's already expressed an interest in math and science. And
that's great.
and I love that. As an engineer, I know exactly what it's like to be the only woman in a room full of 40 or 50 other students. And I look at her and I say, wow, that's awesome that you've already expressed this interest. But how do I keep that going? How do I make sure she doesn't lose that passion that she's got at such a young age and doesn't get discouraged through school? What kind of resources are out there for us as busy families just like mine, so that we can keep going and make sure that our girls especially, are keep their interest in math, science, technology.
Well, we're sitting in a school that is well known in this area for producing some pretty smart, well established kids in not just math and science, but so many. What this president knows we need to do is make sure there are schools like this everywhere.
Absolutely.
Because when you come to a school like this, or you go to any school in the country that is doing what they should do, public schools for our children, that we know what what we're supposed to do. Because if there's one, there can be 1,000 of them. We just have to have the passion, the resources. We have to have champions in Washington and at the local levels who are understanding that education has to be priority for all kids. For all kids. It's not enough to have 1 or 2 great schools here or there. They have to be in every community. And that takes work, and that takes, women stepping up in their communities, speaking out about what they need, not just at the national level, but at the local level. We have to be ready to invest in our schools, invest in our young girls in particular. One of the things Barack has pushed is making sure that we encourage more young girls to enter math and sciences. Those are, as you both know, as engineer and from an engineer, these are the jobs of the future. This is where our young people can secure their futures and provide for the next generations. That's why Barack has doubled Pell Grants to make sure more of our kids can go to college. But we have to have somebody in Washington who's fighting for these resources for our kids. That's what's at stake. That's why I get so, passionate about this stuff, because it's not okay if just my girls are good. And we all are, we are women who have the resources. You've got the time to spend with your kids. But I start thinking about all the deserving kids out there in communities and households who need us fighting for them, because they may not have that parent, that mother that's available for whatever reason.
I think schools need to really reach out. I'm sorry. I think schools really need to reach out to Latino parents too, because I think a lot of Latinos may have the mindset that our kids education is the school's responsibility,
Yeah.
and maybe they're afraid to try and get involved because maybe they don't feel comfortable. But they can really make the difference, and we need to reach out to them and pull them in and include them because they will make a difference in our kids' lives.
There's no question about that, and that's why I think it's so important in the president's investments in Race to the Top, and in making sure that all of these models that you talked about, like the school that we're here today, can be something where other school districts can look at and learn from, because you're right, if you can do it in one place, there's no reason why you can't duplicate that in other places where it's difficult. And so maybe one day you will be able to send your kids to school and feel good about it.
Yeah.
You know, but also in terms of being busy and you know, going to bed at night and waking up and worrying about what your child is going to do. I want to give a chance to Shirley to talk about sort of, you know, what you went through with your son, and not just the focus on education, but on nutrition and healthcare as well.
Right. Well, the thing with children who have autism is that they tend to have a lot of other health concerns as well. So my son also suffers from seizures, and my son also has a variety of food allergies. So the nutrition plays a huge role. And early intervention is really important, but more parents need to know the signs of what it is that's going on. If something seems off, to really get their child diagnosed or evaluated. And a lot of people unfortunately misdiagnose Latino children because of the fact that we speak more than one language, that we speak two languages. So my son had been misdiagnosed. And even though I saw the signs at 18 months when he lost all language, my doctor said, oh no, it's that you guys are bilingual. And he's just confused. And I knew something was wrong, and I kept pushing. And when he was 2, he finally was able to start getting resources. So it's important that we start knowing a little bit more of the signs. And if we know someone with children and we see something is off, that we are supportive and we encourage them as well, because we have to raise our children together.
Absolutely.
And preschool can actually help a lot with that too, because you know, if you're a parent and you don't have any other children to compare your kids to,
right,
you
exactly.
know, by
You don't
sending
know.
them to preschool, either you might see the signs, or potentially one of the teachers might recognize the signs as well. So that would.
Parental involvement and focus is critical. You know, neither of my parents finished college. They didn't have the chance to get the education that they gave me and my brother, but they were always involved. I mean, my mom was a stay-at-home mom, and she was up at our school. We went to public school. It didn't have a ton of resources, but there were 4 or 5 parents that were always there, always asking questions, and they weren't just looking out for their kids, they were looking out for all the kids in the school. So it is important for our parents. That's one of the reasons why I'm so proud that my husband, even in his role, has not missed a parent-teacher conference. And I share that with fathers out there, because, you know,
no one else has an excuse.
you know, but it's, you know, and it's important for the kids to know that he's making that a priority.
Yes.
You know, even when the kids were little and they were 4, and he was like, "What are we meeting about?" They're 4, and it's like, you know what? We're gonna go sit at that little desk, you know, where your knees are pushed up in your face, and we're gonna listen to that report, and we're going to ask questions, and we're going to go back next semester. So at every age, you know, it's not just when they're headed to college. It's starting when they're 3 and being engaged and know what you know, what their teachers are saying about them in class. So that is so important for parents out there, whether you're in Head Start or whether you're homeschooling. It is so critical for us to be actively involved, to be advocates for our kids. But I think that as we talk about our voices as women, as Latinas, it's important for people to know that that voice matters. Whether it's in the ballot box, whether it's in your school, whether it's in your home or in your doctor's office. I mean, we are practicing using our voices to protect our families, to protect our kids. And that's what we have to get used to. You know, the notion that our voices matter.
I think that's exactly.
And our voices make a difference, but they mean nothing if we hold back, if we sit in silence, if we think somehow I'm not smart enough to help my child, that some school knows better than I do. You know, no one knows our kids, knows our families, knows our communities better than we do. So we got to be out there. We've got to be passionate advocates to make sure that this country keeps moving in the right direction.
That lifelong learning piece is so important when we talk about the values that we teach at the dinner table. It's all comes together because when you think about what we do at the table, it's teaching, whether it's table manners or whether it's values. And then as we look at early childhood education, which the president has supported so strongly, and then into in elementary education, high school education with STEM, and then into college with the Pell Grants, you see the path of support for our children in the Latino community where it's needed so much. And we as mothers are bringing that all together around the kitchen table, really talking about all the things that they're learning, but also what are we doing as teachers. And I think that's the most important role that we play as mothers, and especially as Latinas. I know my culture, I teach at the table. You know, my values I teach at the table.
That's right.
I'm not an educator, but and so I have to rely on the education system, and that's why the investment that we're making in education today is so important to all of our families.
And I think the voices are so critical, what you were talking about. Everybody here has a way to express themselves through a blog, the book, you're a photographer. We have critical voices, and we need to make sure that we continue to make those voices heard.
Absolutely.
So I think that we're going to need to start wrapping up, unfortunately. See how quickly this goes? We had so much more to talk about. We could talk about how the focus should also be on trying to get Latinas to be teachers, Latinas and Latinos.
Absolutely.
And I know the president has really focused on making sure that teachers can stay in the classroom. So that's
Absolutely.
a critical piece that we should continue to advocate on.